It started with a quiet knock. One of those days that feels like any other, until it isn't.
She walked in with a clipboard, a tired smile.
To most people, she was just another nurse. But to one man, she was the final test.
He'd had just witnessed something no one else noticed.
He wasn't just a patient. He was a ghost from a life of wealth.
Kindness always returns.
This is a story about what happens when kindness meets hidden fortune.
Her name was Jasmine Lee. She was 34 years old, and she had been a nurse for 9 of those years. Not the kind of nurse who made speeches or ran departments. She was the kind of nurse who sat with people as they cried, who cleaned up after mistakes she didn't make, who showed up 5 minutes early and left an hour late, because her patients needed her more than the clock did. She worked the night shift in the south wing of Saint Germain Hospital, a place with polished floors, new machines, and old habits. The kind of place where titles mattered more than kindness, and where being just a nurse meant you were invisible until something went wrong. Jasmine had learned early not to expect praise, not from the patients, not from the doctors, not even from the families of the people she fought to save. But she stayed. She stayed because she believed that care wasn't just medicine. It was eye contact. It was listening when no one else had the time. It was whispering, "You're not alone," when someone was slipping away in the middle of the night. She didn't come from money. She didn't have connections. She had student loans, a second-hand car, and a calendar full of double shifts. But she never let that show. To the outside world, she was calm, composed, capable. Even when she felt like falling apart, the hospital had its stars. Men like Dr. Jonathan Adams, young, brilliant, and feared. He walked the halls like he owned the building. His name was on research papers. He wore designer watches and corrected people with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. To Dr. Adams, nurses were tools, replaceable, expendable, and Jasmine? She was quiet enough not to challenge him, which made her an easy target. But none of that mattered on the morning she walked into room 306. The room smelled like antiseptic and rain. The blinds were half closed, letting in a gray light that made the world look softer than it was. And in the bed was a man no one recognized. He had no visitors, no flowers, no family photos on the table, just a plain chart with a name. Raymond Cole. He was recovering from what the chart called a mild stroke, but Jasmine saw more than that. There was a stillness in him, not the kind that comes from weakness, but the kind that comes from watching. He didn't speak much, didn't ask for help, didn't complain, but his eyes followed everything, not with suspicion, with curiosity, like he was studying the room, studying the people. And when Jasmine walked in, he looked at her, really looked, not like she was a nurse, not like she was background noise, but like he was waiting to see what she would do next. Jasmine didn't know why she kept glancing back at room 306. Maybe it was because of how quiet he was, or maybe it was the way his eyes followed everything, not in fear or confusion, but like someone studying a room he'd never return to. Over the next few days, she returned often. Raymond Cole never asked for anything. He didn't make jokes. He didn't flirt like some of the older men did to feel young again. He simply watched. And Jasmine, she worked, like always, double shifts, missed breaks, smiles that barely reached her eyes. And then came the moment that changed everything. The hospital had a routine. Morning rounds with Dr. Adams and his entourage of interns. A moving wall of white coats, all nodding when he spoke, all silent when he snapped. That day, Jasmine was adjusting Mr. Cole's IV line, something she had done hundreds of times without a single issue. But Adams stepped in anyway. "You know," he said loud enough for the whole room to hear, "maybe if nurses learned the basics, our patients wouldn't be here for so long." Laughter, quiet, nervous, but it stung. Jasmine didn't answer. She just nodded and stepped back, her face calm, her hands steady. But inside, something cracked. Mr. Cole didn't speak, didn't interrupt, but his eyes narrowed. His fingers gripped the blanket just slightly tighter. That night, Jasmine stayed late, finished notes for patients no one else wanted to cover. She didn't cry, not because it didn't hurt, but because she had cried all her tears years ago, in break rooms with burnt coffee and flickering lights. As she left, she passed room 306 one last time. He was awake, looking at her, and then, without a word, he nodded. Once. It wasn't a big moment, but it felt different, like something had been witnessed, like someone, finally, had seen everything and remembered. 2 days later, Raymond Cole was gone. No discharge order, no explanation. His room was clean, his bed made, as if he had never been there at all. Jasmine asked around. No one knew anything, not the front desk, not the nurses on call, not even Adams. And when she checked the system, his file was gone. Just like that, erased. It didn't make sense, but she had no time to question it. Patients still needed meds, families still needed updates, and her life still didn't allow pauses. She left that shift feeling like she had lost something, though she couldn't say what. What Jasmine didn't know was that while she walked back to her car, exhausted and unseen, someone else was just getting started, because Raymond Cole hadn't vanished. He had simply returned to a different kind of power, and everything he saw, he remembered. Something is coming, and you won't want to miss what she finds next. Tap subscribe now and follow this story to the end. Over the next few days, everything seemed the same, but something about Jasmine had changed. She took the same routes, talked to the same colleagues, looked after the same patients, and yet there was a strange feeling, as if she was being watched, not by surveillance, but by intention. No one talked about the gentleman in room 306 anymore. It was as if he had never existed. No file, no history, no emergency contact. Cole had vanished like smoke and left no trace in the system. Until one muggy Thursday morning, Jasmine was called to the coordination office. She arrived with heavy eyes and her hands full of unfinished forms. She thought it was about a shift change or some bureaucratic error, but the tone was different. The coordinator, cold as ever, simply said, "Sit down. This is serious." A report had been opened against her, signed confidentially, alleging improper conduct during her appointments, clinical errors, disorganization. Jasmine froze. She had never even received a warning in 9 years. And now, all of a sudden, there was an entire document questioning her ethics. She knew it. Deep down, she knew. It was Dr. Adams, humiliated into silence, now returning the pain in writing. "We'll look into it," they said, "but for now, you're under observation." And only then did she realize it wasn't just unfair, it was dangerous, because in the hospital, rumors became truths, and reputations died faster than patients. That night, Jasmine sat on the bench at the bus stop in silence. She didn't have the strength to drive. Her uniform was still dirty, her backpack heavy with notes and fear. She thought about dropping everything, but the rent bill wouldn't pay for itself, and the hospital, It was still the only place where she felt she somehow mattered. But in another corner of the city, in a mirrored building at the top of a business center, someone was reviewing recordings, studied records, observing every detail of that hospital, as if putting together a jigsaw puzzle. In a quiet meeting room, a man in a suit opened a black folder. Inside was a patient's badge, name, Raymond Cole, and next to it, a copy of the report against Jasmine, with handwritten notes, circling phrases like made up, lies, Adams. Underneath, an elegant signature, Raymond Cole, founder, Cole Human Trust. The tables had turned, but Jasmine still didn't know. She thought she was being silenced, when in fact, she was about to be heard by the whole world. Wait until you hear what he left behind. This isn't just a thank you, it's a legacy. If this moved you already, imagine what's still coming. Subscribe and stay. 3 days passed. Jasmine continued to work under surveillance, as if she were a criminal about to make a mistake. She paced the corridors she knew with her eyes closed, and she was beginning to accept that perhaps her time there was coming to an end. Until, one gray afternoon, the receptionist called her name on the radio. Jasmine Lee, please report to room 12A. There's a visitor waiting. Jasmine was surprised. She never received visitors. In the room, there was a man in an impeccable suit, gray hair, and a calm expression. He stood up as soon as he saw her. "Miss Lee," he said, "my name is Marcus Reeves. I'm Raymond Cole's personal lawyer." Jasmine froze. "The patient from 306? He smiled. He was more than a patient. Mr. Cole was the founder of one of the largest social impact funds in the country, and he'd spent the last few years discreetly infiltrating healthcare institutions, observing how people really act when they think they're not being seen." Jasmine sat down without saying a word. "He left you a letter and something else." The lawyer opened a folder. From inside, he took out an ivory envelope with his name handwritten on it. Jasmine opened it with trembling fingers. It was a letter, written in her own hand. "Miss Lee, I entered that hospital as a patient, but I left as a witness to your strength, of your patience, and of your integrity. Even under attack, you were humiliated in public, and yet you continued to serve. People like you should not be ignored. They should be honored. So I leave you 2 gifts. The first is symbolic, a permanent endowment fund in your name to offer scholarships to future nurses. The second, well, that's more practical." Marcus slides a document across the table. Transfer of $2.5 million, direct to Jasmine's account. Exempt donations, no bureaucracy, no catches. She didn't know what to say. Her voice caught in her throat. Her hands were unresponsive. All she could do was cry. But Marcus didn't finish. "There's one more thing. Mr. Cole also contacted the medical council, and he provided sufficient evidence about Dr. Adams' abusive behavior, including recordings, testimonies, and documents. In parallel, in the administrative wing, Dr. Adams received an official notification. Your medical registration is suspended until further notice, under investigation for unethical conduct and abuse of authority." His world fell apart, while Jasmine's was finally beginning to blossom. The hospital looked the same. Same pale walls, same long, silent corridors. But for Jasmine, everything had changed. She went back to work over the next few weeks, not out of obligation, but out of love. Now, with respect, with freedom, with a voice. The fund in her name began to finance courses, books, and scholarships for young nurses who dreamed of nursing but never had the chance. Every year, on the day of her change of shift, a bouquet of discreet flowers was left in her locker. No note, no signature. But she knew that, somehow, Raymond Cole was still watching, not like before, not testing, but cheering. Dr. Adams, for his part, was permanently removed from medicine. His titles lost their luster. His connections fell silent, and for the first time, he was forced to listen, to see what he had never seen, that greatness is not in the badge, but in the heart. Jasmine never wanted recognition. She just wanted to do the right thing, and for that, the world finally saw her. She didn't become rich by luck, but because someone saw value where no one else did. And sometimes, that's what changes everything. A choice, a look, an attitude, a gesture that blossoms in silence and transforms lives. This is not just a story about injustice. It's a story about recognition, about how kindness, when tested, can change destinies. Beyond fortune, real stories, real power, real heart. Subscribe and never miss what's hidden beyond.